Good evening, and welcome to the Scroll. This is Eleazar Sedafine, and this is the Scroll Fire Podcast. I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight, and tonight we have a special treat. This is another NTM podcast, and we're going to have our special guests, Sean Sebastian and Megan Scott, join us tonight, and they're going to talk about the subject, the image of God, and the book, The Image of God, by Eleazar Sedafine. So we really don't want to delay tonight. And this is the ninth book in the Seated series. And it's extremely powerful codex that you really need to pay attention to tonight. So without further ado, Sean Sebastian and Megan Scott.
Welcome. And yes, I am talking directly to you.
We really are.
Wherever you are right now, whatever you're in the middle of, whether you're commuting, folding laundry, or, just trying to catch a mental break, I want you to take a deep breath and just settle in.
Because today's deep dive is incredibly special.
It is.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's a little disruptive in the best way possible. We are looking at a text today that feels less like a traditional book and much more like a mirror.
Right. It's called Image of God by Eleazar Seraphim.
And this is not just a casual weekend read. It's actually the 9th installment in a broader series called The Foundational Identity Stones.
Which is such a great title.
It really is. And the author describes this specific work as a prophetic codex and a scroll of remembrance.
Which I know sounds very heavy.
Very heavy, incredibly mystical right out of the gate. But if we translate that, a prophetic codex is basically a blueprint for the future that is wrapped inside a memory of the past.
It's a text designed to wake you up.
Exactly. And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are going to completely shift your focus. I want you to think about how much of our lives, how much of our daily energy is spent obsessing over the exhausting question of what we do.
Oh, absolutely. What our job title is, what we achieve, what we produce.
Right. Today, we are sidelining all of that. We're looking at the internal truth of who you are. We're exploring how the Imago Dei, the image of God, isn't just some abstract, dusty theological debate meant for seminary classrooms.
Far from it.
According to this text, it is a firm judicial verdict rendered in the courts of heaven. Okay, let's unpack this.
It really is a stunning place to begin, because framing human identity as a legal, eternal verdict, it completely changes the stakes.
It changes everything.
The foundational premise of this book is that humanity's creation in the divine image was never a suggestion. It wasn't a temporary experiment.
Right, it was a decree.
When the phrase, "let us make man," was spoken in the Genesis narrative, the author argues that this was a binding decree. Think of it as a Supreme Court ruling that can never be overturned. Wow.
And this verdict was pronounced before time even existed, before the historical fall of humanity, and crucially, before any personal failure you might be carrying right now.
So it's not contingent on anything we do.
Exactly. The text argues that your true identity is not a response to your failures, nor is it a reward for your successes. It is a memory of eternity. It is a fundamental law written into the very fabric of the cosmos.
That immediately changes the posture we take in life, doesn't it? If it's a verdict that has already been ruled on, you don't have to earn it.
You just have to agree with it.
But let's bring this down to earth for a second. If this is an eternal, unbreakable decree, how does the book explain the actual physical reality of being human?
Right, the messy part.
Yeah, because the source introduces this absolutely fascinating dual nature to how we are made. It describes us as a paradox of dust and breath.
What's fascinating here is why both of those elements, the extreme fragility and the eternal glory, why they are absolutely necessary for us to fulfill our design.
Okay, break that down. The author points out that if you only have dust without the breath, it is completely lifeless. It's just earth. It has no animating spirit.
Just a clump of clay.
Right. But if you only have breath without the dust, it's disembodied. It has no physical form to interact with or steward the material world.
So as a human being, the text suggests you are doing something incredible. You are walking in two realms at the exact same time.
Exactly. The dust grounds you in the temporal, physical world. It gives you a place in creation. And the breath connects you directly to the eternal divine realm.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, leaning too far into either the dust or the breath is where we get into trouble. How does the author suggest we actually maintain that balance in everyday life?
Well, the author gives a very practical warning about losing that balance. If you forget you are dust, meaning if you forget your fragility, your limits, your mortality, you fall into pride,
You start believing you're invincible.
which is the root of so much human destruction and hubris, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if you forget you are breath, if you forget that you carry the eternal divine spark, you fall into despair.
Because you start believing you're worthless. Just a random collection of atoms meant to consume and die.
Yes. The tension of holding both is where human dignity lives.
There is this one highly memorable detail from the source that just stopped me in my tracks when I read it. The author writes about spiritual opposition.
Oh, the part about hell?
Yes, the author says that hell does not fear dust. When you think about it, why would it?
Right.
Dust is just fragile clay that eventually returns to the ground. There's nothing intimidating about dirt.
And hell doesn't fear spirit either because spirit already belongs to eternity.
Exactly. What hell actually fears is dust filled with breath.
It's a brilliant visual.
It fears an eternal witness that is clothed in fragile clay, walking around as an agent of heaven on earth.
The very weakness of the clay is what makes the presence of the eternal breath so glorious. You are living proof that divine glory can be hosted in absolute fragility.
It's beautiful. But of course, the book doesn't ignore the reality of the world we live in.
No, not at all.
It acknowledges that this image, this perfect union of dust and breath, faces constant aggressive opposition. So let's play devil's advocate here on behalf of the listener.
Go for it.
If this image is an eternal, unbreakable judicial decree, as we establish, then why do so many of us feel completely broken?
Yeah.
Why do we look in the mirror and see someone who feels inadequate, anxious, or profoundly flawed? How does the author reconcile a perfect eternal verdict with our messy daily reality?
That is the central tension of the human experience, and the book addresses it through the concept of the cracked mirror.
The cracked mirror.
Right. The text explains that the image of God becomes distorted in our lives through what it calls counterfeits.
Counterfeits, like false identities.
Exactly. These counterfeits are systems, false labels, societal pressures, and personal traumas that try to cloak you in a false identity.
Think about the cultural narratives we are fed every single day.
The counterfeit leans in and whispers, "You are your productivity." Or, "You are your bank account." Or, "You are the worst mistake you ever made."
It acts as a veil trying to hide the true reflection. And those counterfeits are everywhere.
They really are.
They can be macro level systems, like a corporate hustle culture that tells you your only value is how much profit you can generate this quarter.
Right.
Or they can be deeply personal, like a label placed on you in high school that you never quite managed to shake off.
Not smart enough. Too emotional. A disappointment.
Precisely. And those narratives can be incredibly convincing. They root themselves in shame or insecurity.
But the text makes a crucial, liberating clarification here. Distortion and oppression might smudge the mirror. They might even crack the glass entirely. But they absolutely cannot erase the eternal imprint.
That judicial decree we talked about earlier.
It is irrevocable. The image is preserved by design, even when it is heavily obscured by the grime of life.
The visual of a smudged mirror is so helpful. The reflection hasn't vanished. You just have to wipe away the grime to see it.
Exactly.
And the book doesn't just diagnose the problem. It gives us the antidote to all these counterfeit identities. The antidote, according to the author, is remembrance.
Remembrance, not reinvention.
Right. The text constantly urges you to silence the lies of the world by actively recovering the memory of your original design. You don't need to invent a new self.
Or read 10 self-help books to build a better personality.
Exactly. You just need to remember the true one that was decreed before time.
And the book provides a very practical, actionable way to do this, which it calls the name exchange activation.
I loved this part.
It's not just a mental exercise, it's a physical act of defiance against the counterfeits. It asks you to literally write down every false label the world has ever given you. Every word spoken over you by family, by culture, or even the things you've whispered to yourself in your darkest moments of failure.
Yeah.
Let's actually walk through what that looks like for a real person. Imagine you're sitting at your kitchen table with a piece of paper. You write down the word failure because of a business that went under.
You write down unlovable because of a relationship that ended badly. You write down exhausted because you feel like you're constantly running on a treadmill just to keep up.
Exactly. You look at that list, all that accumulated grime on the mirror, and you actively, intentionally cross each one out.
Just strike a line right through them.
Then the activation instructs you to write your true decreed names over them.
Image, likeness, eternal.
It's a physical, tactile act of stripping away the counterfeit veil and tearing down those false narratives. You are taking the pen back from the critics, from the culture, and even from your own insecurities.
And you are realigning yourself with the original verdict. It's deeply empowering because you are taking back jurisdiction over your identity.
You really are.
But what I found fascinating is that the book doesn't just leave us isolated, staring into our own cracked mirrors, trying to piece the reflection back together by sheer willpower.
No, it points us to something outside ourselves.
It points us to Christ, describing him as the true image. He is presented as the ultimate, undistorted, uncracked mirror. When your own reflection is too clouded by shame or trauma to see clearly, looking at the true image restores your clarity.
Because it's not about him giving you some brand new foreign identity that you have to learn how to wear.
It's about him awakening the identity that has been hidden beneath your distortion all along. Here's where it gets really interesting.
It really does. Because this introduces a massive paradigm shift in how we understand our purpose. We move from simply being an image or a reflection to experiencing what the text calls sonship.
Sonship.
The book makes a brilliant theological and practical point here. Reflection without relationship is hollow.
Yes.
It's not enough to just look like the creator. You are meant to belong to the creator's family. Bear the image is to be adopted.
I want to make sure we don't gloss over that because the distinction between just reflecting something and actually belonging to it is vital. You aren't just a shiny object catching light in a room. You are a child of the house. The author talks about this as the seat of acceptance and draws a profound contrast between the mindset of an orphan and the mindset of an heir.
That contrast is the hinge on which so much of our daily anxiety turns. Think about how an orphan operates in the world.
Psychologically and spiritually, an orphan is always hustling.
They are always striving, always begging for approval, or trying to prove they deserve a basic place at the table. It's a survival mechanism.
But an
heir doesn't hustle for their inheritance. An heir doesn't have to prove they belong in the house. An heir simply sits in it.
Let's apply that to a Tuesday morning at the office.
Okay.
An orphan walks into a stressful boardroom meeting thinking, I have to nail this presentation to prove I'm valuable, to prove I deserve to be here, to secure my worth.
Right.
An heir walks into that exact same boardroom with the exact same stakes, but their internal monologue is, my worth was settled before time began. I already belong to the family.
Yes.
So I can make decisions, present my ideas, and handle this pressure without fear, because my identity isn't on the line.
That is what the author means by legislating from intimacy.
Legislating from intimacy.
It's a bit of theological jargon, but practically, legislating just means taking authority or making decisions in your life.
Right.
When you operate from the position of an heir, your decisions flow from a place of intimacy and rest rather than striving and panic.
And this internal shift directly impacts how we interact with the external world. Because once you understand this concept of sonship and resting as an heir, you can understand the book's redefinition of dominion.
Oh, the dominion shift is huge.
The word dominion usually makes people deeply uncomfortable, right? It carries so much historical baggage.
It really does.
People hear dominion and they immediately think of domination, control, exploitation, making a lot of noise and forcing people or the environment to bend to your will. How does the book redefine this?
It flips the cultural definition entirely. The counterfeit version of dominion is manipulation and control, but true dominion, as defined by this text, is the outworking of sonship. Because you are an heir, seated in acceptance, you are entrusted with authority. But that authority is entirely about stewardship, care, and cultivation.
It's not about forcing your way to the top.
Not at all. True dominion actually flows from a place of profound peace. The author makes a beautiful statement that creation responds to the reflection of the creator inside of you, not to your ambition, your volume, or your endless striving.
So when you are resting in your identity, you naturally cultivate the spaces around you, your workplace, your family, your community. You bring order and peace just by your presence rather than by barking orders.
Exactly.
That changes everything about leadership. But there's another layer to this. We've been talking very individualistically. My mirror, my identity, my dominion. Does the book address the danger of viewing this solely as a solo mission?
It does, and this is where the scope of the book gets breathtaking. It introduces the concept of the corporate image.
the corporate image.
The book emphasizes that the image of God is entirely too vast, too multifaceted for any single human being to carry alone. You, as an individual, are glorious, but you are just one fragment of a much greater mirror.
The fullness of the image requires community.
Exactly.
The mosaic. I had to reread the section where it talks about this because it completely destroys the hyper individualistic mindset we are so used to.
We really are. We often think spirituality is just me and my mirror.
Right. But if I am just one fragment, that means I am fundamentally incomplete without the fragments around me.
Yes, a single fragment of glass can catch a beautiful glimmer of the light, but it takes millions of fragments joined together to truly reflect the fullness of the Creator.
Wow.
This means that unity isn't just a nice social ideal. Unity is what actually unveils the image of God to the world. And crucially, the book points out that diversity within this corporate image is not a distortion, it is dimension.
That is a phrase to write down. Diversity is dimension, not distortion. Right? We spend so much time in our cultural echo chambers, terrified of people who look different, think differently, or have different lived experiences.
But the text argues that every different background, every unique perspective, adds a necessary facet to the overall likeness. You simply cannot have the full image of God without the presence and dignity of the entire community.
Which means excluding anyone or diminishing any group of people actually fractures the very mirror we're all trying to look into.
Exactly.
It makes the pursuit of justice, empathy, and inclusion not just a modern social issue, but a deeply rooted theological necessity. You can't see the whole picture if you are actively throwing away pieces of the mosaic.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Where does it all lead?
right, we have this corporate, beautiful, yet currently cracked mirror. We are striving to remember our identity. But the text doesn't just leave us in the present, struggling to piece it all together.
It anchors everything.
Yes, it anchors everything in what it calls the eschatological promise. Now, eschatological is another heavy word, but it just refers to the ultimate destiny, the end times perspective, or where the whole story is definitively headed.
Okay, so where is it headed?
The book promises that the current state of things, this cracked mirror, the counterfeits, the struggle, is strictly temporary. You are not a finished product, and the world is not in its final state.
So what is the final state? Where is this trajectory taking us?
The trajectory of the image of God within you is moving from mortality to immortality. You are destined to bear the full, unshadowed image of what the text calls the man of heaven.
The man of heaven.
The promise is that in this future reality, the image will be unveiled in perfect, breathtaking clarity. Every crack in the mirror will be mended. Every smudge of trauma, failure, or false identity will be wiped clean forever.
The tension between dust and breath will be perfectly resolved in a glorified state. It's an incredible promise to hold on to, especially when the present moment feels remarkably heavy. And that brings us to the core of why this matters for you, listening to this deep dive right now.
Yeah, bringing it back home.
We've talked about eternal decrees, heavenly courts, cracked mirrors, and eschatological promises. But the true beauty of these seated decrees is how they practically transform your daily life.
Every single day.
Whether you are dealing with massive workplace burnout, trying to heal from generations of family trauma, or fighting against systemic societal injustice, knowing that your worth is a pretemporal decree changes the entire game.
It really does.
You do not have to perform to justify your existence. You do not have to hustle for your inheritance. You just have to remember who you already are. So what does this all mean?
I want to leave you with this final thought to really mull over, to take with you into the rest of your week.
Please do.
If your identity was permanently, irrevocably decreed before time even began, and if your ultimate future glory is already a guaranteed, sealed certainty, how does that completely remove the pressure from whatever room, meeting, or conflict you have to walk into tomorrow?
You literally have nothing left to prove to anyone.
Nothing. And furthermore, if every single person you pass on the street or sit next to on the subway is a necessary living fragment of that exact same divine mirror, how does that change the way you look at the stranger you usually just ignore?
What a profound challenge to walk away with. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this deep dive. We hope it brought you a sense of rest, a sense of clarity, and a powerful remembrance of who you truly are. Until next time.
Wow. We'd like to thank Sean Sebastian and Megan Scott again for leading our discussion this evening. Extremely powerful understanding and viewpoints on the subject in the book, The Image of God by Eliezer Seraphim. Um, Extremely powerful insights from their perspective. I think it's awesome that we can hear uh, other people elaborate on the uh, the 9 codexes that we've presented in the Seated series. Now, what I would like for you to do is to go in and you can look on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited and go under Eleazar, Eliazar, Seraphim, Seraphim, and look at each of those books. We have the Seated series. We also have what we call a Gate series, but I would I would ask that you do the Seated series first and spend some time in the Seated series so that when you do decide to go into the Gate series, it will land right with you. Um, I'm really excited tonight that Sean Sebastian and Megan Scott have led us through the Seated series. It's a uh, very powerful um, talks that we've had over the last few days. So we appreciate you for joining us tonight. Um, Sometime during the month of March, not March, but the month of May, we're going to start the next series, the Gated series. But until then, we'll see you later. Thank you for joining us. Good night.